Hello everyone. Now that I've managed to share a good chunk of the important information, I can finally give you the build-specific stuff related to the perks and things. I wanted to give you that information because I want to be as detailed as possible to ensure that you understand the builds to the fullest. So let me get started with the perks that I don't think really work. The best examples of this are going to be Dead Center and Speed Demon. A lot of build guides out there will tell you to put those perks on, but I've done this with more than one build now, and I'm not noticing a difference really between the builds. They all do a crazy amount of damage, so I just don't see it as necessary. Plus, there's just other things that you can spend your perk points on that are far better. So for that reason, I'm not going to be going into those perks. And we'll go over that more a bit later, but I just want to make sure that that was explained before we get into everything. Okay, let's get into Cyberware now. Equipment. Here we go. Okay, so we need to talk about the Berserk because this will be at the core of the builds I will be giving you. There is a pretty big difference between the only two viable Berserks, and that is going to be Zetatech and Mortech. The difference that you need to be aware of between the two is in the mod slots and the buff. The Mortech gives you a 20% HP buff, whereas Zetatech doesn't. Zetatech has 3 mod slots, whereas Mortech only has 2, though. So you do have to be aware of that difference when determining what to use. For my builds, I will be using Zetatech because the mod slots mean a lot, and you'll see why. Let's move on to the other categories. I want to cover the circulatory system next, as this seems to be a very large debate within the community regarding builds. A lot of build guides out there will tell you second heart with Biomonitor, but I disagree with this. If you absolutely need 2 Cyberware heals to survive, then you're doing something wrong, in my opinion. You should never get to a point of needing 2 heals to get around a situation. You have the max docs and other things to work with. For that reason, I will be using Biomonitor, Bioconductor, and Bioplastic Blood Vessels at the core of these builds. Bioconductor is to give you a better cooldown on the Berserk. The Biomonitor, well, actually Berserk and Biomonitor, yeah, it's cooldown for both. The Biomonitor's there just as an oh crap situation, and the Bioplastic Blood Vessels are there to get your health to full each time you're out of combat, which will happen quite a bit throughout your play through of Cyberpunk. That's why I don't have the second heal there, is because I'm using Bioplastic instead of that. You will loot a green Bioplastic for just doing the NCPD stuff at Watson, which you can do at the very start of the game once they let you roam. So you can use the green to get you through most of the game. And then when you get to a point of using better, then you can. So that's circulatory. Let's go into the other areas. Let's do immune. Both of the builds I will be giving you, and maybe more in the future, they will be using a high amount of cool. You will have the ability to use Pain Editor as well as Metabolic Editor. Those are going to be your core immune system cybermods, or cyberware. Okay, so that's that. Let's see, we're going to go into Integumentary. Let's do Integumentary next. Under Integumentary, the more important ones are going to be either your heat converter, fireproof coating if you don't want to use that, and superdermal weave. You're trying to make yourself immune to fire and bleed. You will be immune to shock through your passive or perks, and you will be immune to poison through the previously mentioned immune system cyberware. That will cover all of your bases there. I do not think that the subdermal armor is worth saying it's important. It's optional, would be a better way of putting it. It's only 200 armor, so it's not really that much. It's only good when it's stacked with other things, so I would do that as a very last cyberware. Also, on the very last cyberware thing would be the Signaptic Signal Optimizer. It's the skeleton that gives you plus health. It's certainly great to have with the build, but it's not required. It's optional, just like the subdermal armor. If you get to a point very late in the game when you can just throw your money at it and you've got other things to stack with it, then by all means feel free to do so. But yes, I would say that it'll be a core option of the builds, just like the subdermal armor. Now to get into the double jump and charge jump. My builds will have stealth as optional. If you are using stealth, I do recommend the charge jump, and we will get into that a bit later. But if you're not using the stealth, then you can use double jump if you want to. Or charge jump, really up to you. This build is very flexible. Well, these builds I should say. Okay, now talk about Kuroshi. When you pay off Victor, you can get access to the Kuroshi Optics Mark III. That will give you 3 mod slots, and it does not cost a lot of eddies. It's 5,000, I think. Yeah, it's 5,000. Yeah, so it's not that very expensive for what you're getting, and I'll show you why. Moving on to Cyberware mods now. Okay, it took me a few seconds to scroll, but Extended and Chain Berserk are going to be at the core of the builds that I will be giving you, because you do want to ensure that you're getting duration and cooldown. When you get Bioconductor, well, assuming that my math is correct and there's no bugs, Bioconductor will bring it the Berserk down to 21-second cooldown. Once you get Extend and Chain Berserk, it will bring it to a 2.5-second cooldown, which is the more important piece of math to be aware of. If I am correct with my math and it's not a bug, 2.5-second cooldown is really good. That means you will not be without Berserk for very long. So you want to use it as much as possible. As far as the Kuroshi Optic mods, though, you will loot the Explosive Analysis mod for the Kuroshi Optics at the very start of the game, and you will loot it again if you do the NCPD scanner things in Watson. So I would recommend putting that in there because, as you saw with the Cyberware earlier, there are certain chain reactions you can use with that. So like you could throw a char grenade and give yourself more damage through the heat converter. So yeah, you can literally burn yourself on purpose for more damage. Explosive Analysis helps you aim those grenades, so that's why I would say that this is important mod. It's not like you loot it anyways. Trajectory Analysis is going to be in any of the builds because it's just free 50% headshot damage. Weak Spot Detection is going to be the third one because that's 5% chance to crit. Awesome. You should be able to loot that one as well. The Headshot Multiplier one, that one I haven't seen as loot, so I think that has to be purchased for 20,000 eddies, unfortunately. But there you have it. There is all of your Cyberware and their mods. Now let's talk about perks. Okay, let's start with tech. So under engineering, you are going to be getting insulation with the build. Insulation does make you immune to shock, so it's just a wonderful perk to have because it saves an integumentary slot and it gives you immunity to shock, so wonderful all around. Now the bigger discussion with the technical is the crafting perks. Any build I will be presenting, at least for the foreseeable future, will be using crafting. So I would consider Mechanic, True Craftsman, Grease Monkey, Cutting Edge, Edge Runner Artisan, which one is it? Oh, cost optimization. Yeah, there it is. Took me a second to find it. Cost optimization is pretty important. Waste Not, Want One is pretty important. Let There Be Light, Tune Up, they're also important. 200% efficiency. And Field Technician, those are all very important. So, here, 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 there, here, there, and there. So, there you have it. There's all of your tech perks. Now, as I think I mentioned earlier, stealth is optional. If you're not a person for stealth, that's perfectly fine. So we'll go and cover Cold Blood first, and then we'll go into stealth because stealth is optional for the builds. So Cold Blood's important. Critical Condition. Unbreakable. Cold and Calculating. Coldest Blood. Coagulant. Yeah, those what I would say are your important perks. I would say the ones that are optional are Defensive Clotting. If you have spare perk points, then you can chunk them into it, but I wouldn't say it's important. Where is it? Oh, Rapid Blood Flow. Rapid Blood Flow is an optional one, so I wouldn't worry about that unless you have spare perk points and have kind of reached towards the end of the game. And Will to Survive is perfectly okay as an optional. You can't go wrong with that. Yeah, so I would say that's pretty much all that you have to worry about with Cold Blood. After that, it's really build specific. What I just listed is universal. Okay, let's talk about strength, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about body attribute next. I'm not convinced about the combat regeneration quite yet, so I would say anything to do with combat regeneration would be optional. You can certainly stack it with Cold Blood, as we saw just a moment ago. But again, you have max stocks and other things, so that's why I see it as combat regeneration as optional. But I would say that as far as all builds are concerned, Epimorphous is important. Invincible is important. Let me see. Both builds will have access to Steel Shell. I would say that's optional. Yeah, cardio cure I would say is optional. Let's see what else we have in here. Oh, steel and chrome is definitely important. I'll put this all in the description to kind of make it easier for you. Kind of like listing all this for you, but I just want to go over it just so you're aware. Soft on your feet's optional. That's if you're doing a airborne build, which we'll go over in just a moment. Yeah, and I would say that's really all that's important under the body. Or at least important to be aware of, I should say. Okay. Let's bounce back to... Oh, okay. Now let's bounce back to cool. There was a reason that I kind of skipped over it after Cold Blood. It's because I needed to talk about the reduced fall damage perk. I have noticed, and I will do more testing to make sure that this is accurate or can be used enough times, but the Hidden Dragon perk allows you to do non-lethal takedowns if you are landing on the target. If you're using the charge jump, you can get up to roofs, and in some cases, if you're able to run and jump, you can launch yourself high enough to where this will trigger. So this is a way to make Cyberware work with a perk. Again, this is if you're using stealth though, because stealth is optional. So having the ability to reduce fall damage is actually kind of nice, considering you're doing an airborne build with this kind of scenario. I would say that if you're using stealth, Crouching Tiger is certainly a valuable perk. I'm not really sure if to qualify it as important or optional yet, but it is certainly nice being able to move around. Where is it? It's as far as Ghost is concerned, I'm not really sure if this is important or optional as well. It is nice to have reduced detection, considering that 80%, assuming that you're even using stealth, you will spend 80% of your game using 80% of the game using it. So considering that you're using a lot of your time stealthing, then yeah, this can actually work or help. But I don't know if it's fair to call it optional or important yet. I have been testing Stunning Blows, and it appears to work pretty well, so I, again, not sure if this is optional or important, but it's certainly a stealth perk to be aware of. Assassin is one of the few universal ones, and I would say that this would be far more valuable than Speed Demon or Dead Center. So if you want to take that, certainly feel free to. Sniper and Silent but Deadly, I think, are perks that would be considered optional as well, or at least I'm not sure if it would be optional, I should say. I mean, yes, if you're spending 80% of the time stealthing, then it will certainly help, but it's all dependent on the gun, so there's that problem. Strike from the Shadows, I would say, is also one of those I'm not sure on. And From the Shadows, I would also say is one of those ones I'm not sure on. Other than that, though, I would say don't bother with any of the other perks in stealth, assuming that you even use stealth. Okay. Let's see here. We need blades. Okay, so melee is going to be either the supporting function or the main function of the builds I will be presenting. We are talking about universal here, so I would say universal would be Flight of the Sparrow, Shifting Sands, and where is it? Slow and Steady is fine as optional, but only towards late game when you're stacking everything. Oh, Blessed Blade, I would consider that to be universal as well. I mean, any one of my builds is going to be using that. So, yeah, I would say that those would be really what to look for in blades. As far as the gun perks are concerned, that's specific to the build, so I can't really cover that. But I can tell you that, well, at least I can't cover it in this recording because I'm doing universal, but shifting sands with, where is it? Like a Butterfly is a really great combo to have, even if you're not using katanas as your primary weapon. Okay, so that covers all the universal perks. Now let's cover the universal weapons. Okay. As far as universal weapons are concerned, that's going to be on the melee side of things because you can really go either way in terms of the guns. So, due to both builds using, or well, actually, the builds I will be presenting, maybe not just the two, will be using Berserk. So, in this particular scenario, I would say Cocktail Stick, or the one that I'm not really sure on how to pronounce, which is that one over there. So those would be your universal weapons. The mods are going to be pretty straightforward. I guess we can cover it real quickly, seeing as this was pretty short. I mean, of course, I'll be using Fortuna, Bully, and Deadeye. I mean, that's standard of really every build. There's no reason not to change that. But where is it? Backpack's fine. Oh, if you can find Plume, I would say that that would be better than the body perk for that. Because again, if you're doing an airborne build, then Plume is going to be a better option than spending perk points into it. Of course, you're going to want zero drag for really any of the builds I present. Being mobile is important really for anything. Let's see, where is... Oh. If you're doing the airborne build, you're going to want soft soul as well, because that way the enemies don't hear you landing. So that's armor mods. Let me go over here. Oops. So for weapon mods, I do recommend using packs, even if you're not intending to do a less lethal playthrough. It's still less lethal and plus damage. So in my opinion, it's going to be better than what is it, Crunch? Yeah. So I think packs is actually going to be better than Crunch, because it's damage and less lethal. You're going to be running into gigs and side quests where less lethal is required, so you might as well load your firearm with that. That's going to be universal to any of the builds. Passive fire, penetrator, yeah. Pulverize, weaken, countermass, yeah. Okay. Vendetta, okay. Oh yes, that's what I was looking for. So it's Vendetta that I would say don't go anywhere near, because it's really too specific and you're not going to be guaranteeing headshots all the time. But any one of these other things that you see are perfectly okay. Autoloader, weaken. Oh, actually it's Pulverize. Yeah, it's Pulverize and Vendetta you don't want to go anywhere near, but everything else is perfectly okay. So that's going to be all of this over here. So there you have it. There is everything universal about the build. Again, I will put everything in the description so it's a lot easier to keep track of. Thanks for listening.